Hey everybody, welcome to this Niche Pursuits Insider Blueprint. Today we're going to be talking about how to pick your first profitable Amazon FBA product. Profitable being the key word there. I guess anybody can launch a failing product, and we've done our share of those, but we've also had some nice successes as well. So hopefully today I'm going to show you some of the things that we've learned. So if you've been on the fence or thinking about launching a product, or maybe you've had some failed products, we can get you into the black and get you making some money there. So I'm Jake. I'm on Spencer's team. We've launched a number of products together. I've launched some products on my own outside of Spencer's business. I help manage his Amazon FBA business. So been doing this for a couple of years. I've seen quite a bit. So hopefully I'll share some of that with you today, and you'll feel a lot more confident about launching your own product. So first, let's talk about some traits of a winning product. First, may sound obvious, but that there's proven demand for the product or for the problem that it solves. And so that would be, if there's a product category or something that maybe you are inventing or pioneering a little bit. So maybe that product itself doesn't actually exist in the form that you're thinking, but the problem it solves, there are products that do that. So you're creating a new solution to an existing problem. Either way it works. So using tools like Jungle Scout, which we'll talk about in a minute, you can see the sales numbers on Amazon, and also just kind of looking around at other third-party tools, things like that, just making sure that there are buyers out there. If you've thought of an idea and it doesn't seem like there are any products on Amazon or anywhere else that you can find, there may be a reason for that. Okay, so you want to see that people are actually buying what it is that you're thinking about. Another thing is just having unique features and benefits. And so if you want to have a profitable product, we've found the best luck when we take something that is an existing product and we just improve upon that. And so we're going to talk about some specific strategies here in a minute for how you can do the same thing. But it's much easier to stand out from the crowd, and selling on Amazon is extremely crowded. So when you've got a product that looks the same and basically is the same as a product where there's hundreds of others, it's very, very hard to have consistent sales there. So you want to have something that's got a little bit of a unique story. There's a bunch of different ways to accomplish that. Next is that you want to have a hefty margin that leaves some room for error. So not everything goes perfectly. There's times where, we've thought, hey, we can easily sell these for $40. And then when we get there, maybe sales are slow, or maybe the competition gets tougher as time goes by. And so we're forced to lower prices a little bit and kind of work our way down. If your margins are really tight, in other words, if I'm selling it for $40 and at the end of the day, I'm only making $5 profit on that, that's not a very good profit margin, because if anything happens, even just some customer returns, or if I've got to lower prices a little bit, all of a sudden now I'm maybe breaking even, if not losing money. And so we don't really have a set number to say it always needs to be over this, but we always want to feel confident that we've got plenty of room there, that if we need to lower prices or something, we can do that. Maybe a good rule of thumb that I've heard mentioned before is the rule of 1/3. So for instance, let's say that you've got a product that you can purchase for $10, all in, to sort of get it in the door to Amazon, and you want to be able to sell that product for $30. So at $30, a third of that is your cost, the $10. A third of it roughly is going to go to Amazon for their fees for fulfillment and their commission and all that stuff, and then a third would go to you for profit. So if you're looking for just a little rule to kind of give you some guidance, maybe take that into consideration. But every product is different in that way. It kind of depends what you're trying to do with it. And then one way to do that is to check the FBA calculator. I'm going to show you that real quick. Let me jump out of my presentation here. So the Fulfillment by Amazon calculator. Now, all the products that we do sell FBA. I guess I should have clarified that for those that are brand new. FBA just simply stands for Fulfilled by Amazon. That means we send our products into Amazon's fulfillment centers, and then when they sell, Amazon delivers those products. So we don't actually have, a bunch of units sitting around in our garage and in our basement. We're not shipping stuff out, which is pretty sweet. So you pay a little bit of a premium for that, but it's well worth it. Customers get prime shipping. There's a lot of benefits there. So when we look at the FBA calculator, what this does is that you can go find an existing product and plug it in here and find out how much your fulfillment cost would be. And so this is a great way to determine those margins that I was talking about. So let's just take a look at this. This is just like a snow sled here, selling for $32.50. So let's say that you wanted to make a similar sled, and you're trying to figure out, you kind of know, well, the manufacturer said I can get it for this much, but how much is it actually going to cost me to sell that item? So what you can do is you can come down. The ASIN is a number that Amazon gives. It's like their identification number. If I copy that, I can come over to the FBA calculator, paste that in here, hit search, and it'll find the item. And then down here you can plug in the price. Now this is going to be the price that you think you're going to sell it for. So in this case, I'll just put in what they're selling it for now. So let's just say that I matched their price, and then I go hit calculate. What's going to happen is it breaks down, the fees that Amazon's going to charge you, the fees they'll charge for fulfillment, and at the end of the day you're left with $19.44. So it sold for $32, you've got $19, and so now all right, it's going to cost this much to get it made, it's going to cost this much to ship it, and all of these numbers, and you kind of know a per item number. And let's say it costs $10 all in to get to Amazon, and now I know that I'm going to make $9.44 roughly every time that I sell one. So it's just a good way to plug in and get some actual numbers when you start thinking about a product and what you've got in mind. Find out what you're actually looking at there. All right, so let me jump back into the presentation. So let's talk about how you can start brainstorming some ideas. So here's just some tips for the initial brainstorming process. Now, you may already have what you feel like is a great idea, or you've thought of something like, oh man, why hasn't anybody done this yet? And if so, that's great. One way you can, if you're not there yet and you just, you're trying to think of an idea and you're kind of racking your brain, you watch a lot of Shark Tank and you're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Here's some ways to go about this in very practical terms. First, look for a way to scratch your own itch, as the saying goes. In other words, a lot of the great products that you hear about that are so simple, they all came from, hey, I was having this problem, this was driving me crazy, and I went to look for a product to fix it, and I couldn't find one. Or I tried the products that were out there, and none of them worked very well, and so I thought, you know what, I'm going to make my own. That may sound kind of daunting, but with some of the technology and things we're going to look at, it's easier than ever before to take an idea and actually turn that into a real product. And I've seen that myself and been blown away by it over the last year or so. But that's the first thing, So an example, let me show you a product here that I saw that's kind of clever. And I don't know the backstory of the person that came up with this, but I could imagine that this was probably something where it was a scratch your own itch type situation. These are, they're called Froggles, and so it's basically a set of kids swimming goggles where they solve the problem of if you've ever had kids and put goggles, they're always screaming and crying because what are typically those rubber straps are getting tangled up in their hair, and they're pulling their hair, and they're very uncomfortable to put on and take off. And so I can imagine somebody who's maybe a swimming coach, or somebody who's a parent with kids that swim, they see this problem and they just think about what's really a pretty simple solution, putting what's just like a neoprene, like what you'd see like a koozie made out of, over these rubber straps, and making it comfortable to slide on and off of a kid's head when they get done swimming. And so just a clever example of solving a pretty simple problem in a new way is a great way to come up with a product idea. So let me hop back here, using Jungle Scout to verify that similar products are selling. So I'm just going to go and go off the fly here on Amazon. So in this case, let's just say that I had come up with this idea, and I would go look for kids swim goggles. In Jungle Scout, they have a free version. We subscribe to the Pro version, which is a paid tool, but you can get started with this for free. And they have this little browser plugin, which will basically, when you pull up results on Amazon, so I pulled up just kids swim goggles, and now if I click on this, what I'm going to find out is based on their sales rank on Amazon, Jungle Scout gives me a pretty good estimate of what their sales numbers are over the last 30 days. So it gives you a bunch of information here This is the sales rank here, the estimated sales, that's how many units approximately they've sold in that time frame, and then the estimated revenue that they've made. So we can just see, by verifying this, I would take a quick look at this if I was making goggles or something to go along with goggles, and you can easily see that there are people doing very, very well selling kids swimming goggles. No surprise, right? But if you were doing something really obscure and you come here and you see that the top sellers are maybe only selling a couple $100s worth of products, and you see a lot of products on here that they have no data at all, or it shows less than $100 or something like that, that might be a problem, because that suggests to you that, hey, products are out there but not many people are buying them. And so what that tells me is, even if I get my product with really good visibility to where I'm the #1 product out there on Amazon, well, if the #1 product sells $300 a month, is that really worth my time? And so at this stage, you're really just verifying, are there sales in this category? And obviously with something like kids swimming goggles, there are plenty of sales to be had, and you can see there are sales up and down the page. It's not just the first 2 listings and then everybody else is way behind. I mean, there's a lot of different brands and varieties that are selling really well, and that's kind of what you want to see. Next is searching Pinterest and Etsy to come up with product ideas or DIY solutions. And so this is just a way that I've found to get your creative juices flowing a little bit. You've seen a lot of these hacks and stuff like that that'll get shared on Facebook or on Pinterest or something, where somebody's come up with some different household products and maybe repurpose them to solve some other problem. And a lot of times there's products that can be developed from that. We've done a couple like that with mixed results, but it's definitely a way to sort of, if you feel like you're hitting a wall and you're not a very creative person, it's a great way to kind of get your mind rolling a little bit on problems you could potentially solve. Because if people are having to make DIY solutions for problems around their house, that may mean that there's no products out there that really do a good job at whatever that problem is. And so that could be an opportunity to think through that. Another is using keyword tools that are available to you, like Longtail Pro, SEMrush, even Google Trends or the Google Keyword Planner, just to see how often people are searching for the products that you're starting to think about. So as you're looking through, like with Jungle Scout, it's very easy to get lost in Amazon and looking at all these different categories. And then what I like to do is, if I'm looking at swim goggles, Amazon always gives you that suggestion of people also bought this, and that kind of takes you to a related product usually. And so you can kind of work your way through Amazon like that for hours if you'd like, just getting some general ideas if you really have no clue what you want to do, and kind of verifying markets. So once you get to that point, you start to narrow it down a little bit, or you see some things that are kind of interesting, using a keyword tool, looking at Google Trends to see over the last couple of years, are people searching for this more or less, and kind of see where it's headed and what that market looks like. Is a great way to start validating even further how people are searching that, what that's looking like, is it trending up or down, that sort of thing. All right, so let's talk about a couple of launch strategies that are, and you'll see how this works here. And the first one is great for somebody who's on a very tight budget. So maybe you've never done this before. You don't want to spend a lot of money, or maybe you just don't have a lot of money to spend and you want to get in the game, get your feet wet a little bit. This strategy is something I first heard about over at Steve Chu, his site, mywifequitherjob.com. He had a podcast interview, a guy named Will, who was talking about this strategy, and then we ended up using it, and we found we've had some that didn't work, and we found a product that worked pretty well using this strategy. And the idea is pretty simple. Rather than going through this whole long process of trying to come up with a very custom product up front, instead go to a marketplace like AliExpress, which I'll show you here in a moment, finding products that you can buy at a wholesale price and just buy them as is. And because of that, you're able to buy in very low quantities. And sometimes you can buy just a single product, or you might buy 10 or 20 products. And so you might spend, $30 or something like that, as opposed to doing some big custom order where you spend a couple $1,000s. And then basically you can take that product, send it into Amazon, create a new product on Amazon, and sort of launch it. and just see what happens. If you'd like to do some sponsored campaigns or something like that to get some visibility, you can, or just let it ride. And the idea here is to try to find little niche markets and things that don't have a ton of competition, where you can just launch something very quickly, see if it has sales. If not, hey, I'm out 30 or 40 bucks or maybe $100, something like that. It's not the end of the world. It's not something that's gonna make you get foreclosed on your house there. So it's relatively low risk there. But the benefit, of course, is that you can start with a small amount of money and just test a market. And so you kind of throw a bunch of stuff against a wall and see what sticks. If you just do one product, maybe you get lucky, but it's probably not going to work for you. It's better to test little bits of a bunch of different kinds of stuff and just see, hey, I put this product out there, there's really nothing special about it, and I'm starting to make some sales. And maybe that shows you that, hey, maybe this is a market where I can get in there and do some good business. And then the next step to this strategy, and this is what we did when we found a product that was selling a little bit. We were just hoping to kind of break even off of that first order. Again, I think we spent about $70. But once we sold out, I think we ordered it one more time, just the AliExpress version. It was just a very simple paper product, something you would take to a certain kind of a party. And once we saw that that sold through again, basically what I did is then I started working with manufacturers to make a custom version of that product. And so we took the same idea and basically just made a second generation of it. I went out and we hired a designer to make a cooler looking version. We made it, it was something, it was a set of 10. We made it a set of 20. So we just made it much, much better, and we were able to charge a higher price. But we had already proven that, hey, we can rank here, we get some sales here, and we were able to take it and essentially just use the same product, making a new and improved version of it, and then we were able to sell it for a much higher profit margin and actually make some real money on that. And so this is a great way to test that idea, see if it floats, and kind of go from there, and you can build it out further. The next launch strategy number 2, actually let me jump out real quick. I wanted to show you AliExpress. So here's an example of how that would look. So I just went to AliExpress, and this is just everything under the sun is on here. I don't know, I was just typing in random stuff. I went to wedding hair accessories, and so they've got all these little tiaras and all kinds of stuff. And I saw this one that was kind of interesting here. It's like a floral headband thing, I guess, that you would use for weddings or other stuff, and they're $1.06 a piece, and if you click in there, it'll tell you the minimum order, and usually it's very, very small. Then I went over to Amazon and kind of did the same thing. I searched wedding floral headband, and I was looking at some of these, and you can see the different varieties here. So maybe it's something where it looks like a lot of them are selling for $8 to $12. That's sort of the range. So maybe I could take that, buy them for $1, come on here and try to sell it for 10, and just see what happens. Maybe I buy 20 bucks of them, I get 20 of them, send them in, see if I can sell them. Worst case, maybe I drop my price to $6 or $7 and just try to get my money back. So if it sells slowly, you can kind of get out of it without losing your shirt there. But if you find out, hey, those sold pretty quickly, well, maybe you've got a good market to go into, and you can start making some more custom designs, making a full set, something like that, learn a little bit more about the market, spend some more time and focus on it. All right, so let me jump back to launch strategy number 2 here, and this is sort of the exact opposite of what I was talking about, and this one is change now and launch later. All right, so instead of just going and launching with a generic product like I was just talking about and then trying to iterate and make changes once you've proven the sales, this we've done more often, we've had some success with as well, is really about looking for products that sell now on Amazon, finding out what reviewers are saying about it, particularly critical reviews or constructive feedback, or people that are talking about things they wish would be different. Hey, I love this product, but if it would just do this, it would be the greatest thing ever. When you dig into reviews, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment, you can really find some good nuggets there from time to time, give you some insight and give you some ideas about how you might make that version of the product and make it unique. If you're able to take something that people like and give it those things that people are asking for, and just create your own version of it, might just be a winner right there. And so one way to do that is if you can filter down to the 2 to 4-star ratings. I found that a lot of times, 5-star ratings, you're going to have some of those incentivized reviews where people aren't really saying much of substance, or they're just a big fan of the brand. And then 1-star reviews are kind of the opposite. You get a lot of disgruntled people who just seem very angry, so they don't have a lot of things in there to say that have value to you. But people somewhere in the middle a lot of times will have pros and cons and like legit stuff to say, which can actually be helpful when you're doing this kind of research. Another thing you can do, and I'll show you this now, is that you can search for words. I like to search for words like suggestion or wish, because these are things that come up when people say, my one suggestion would be, or I just wish it did this, or some other little words like that you might think of. You can go search through all the reviews and look for those things. So let's carry on the example with the swim goggles. So this is a Speedo Kids swim goggles, which obviously is a big brand. So if I was going to do something like the product I showed earlier with the what were they called, the Froggles, all right, let's just say, take a step back here. If I was doing research trying to come up with a product like that, and I said, hey, I know it's a problem with my kids, they're always getting these things tangled in their hair, and I'm trying to think through, how can I make that better? I might want to come down and look at these reviews. So let me go back a page here. If I'm just on the product page on Amazon, this is how you can get into searching through reviews. So if you scroll down to where all of the reviews are, they've got a little link here to see all verified purchase reviews, and that's what you want to go to. And then when you do that, it always has the top positive review, the top critical review, and then down below you can search for a particular keyword. And so, like I mentioned, if I search the word wish, it'll pop it up and kind of highlight where it was. So, I love the fit. I wish they didn't fog. I wish the glasses came in a clear color, so you can see some suggestions. In this case, again, I mentioned, I know a product or a common problem with this is that it gets tangled in the kid's hair. So maybe I search the word hair and see if anybody else, what they're saying about that. Do these do a good job? And here's one, pulled the hair out, pulled out chunks of her hair. They claim to be tug free on the hair. They're snug without tangling the hair, so they sort of had a different experience. But anyway, you can kind of go through and look for some trends and look for some things that people are saying. And my suggestion would be is to have a Google Doc open or Evernote or something like that where you just sort of record some common things that you're seeing. And so I would repeat this process and go through a number of the top selling kids goggles in this case and just look for some trends there. It doesn't have to be just one product that you're looking at. You should be looking at all the top sellers and just trying to find a space where you can come in, create something a little different, something that there might be a market for. And once you figure that out, then it's time to go to somewhere like Alibaba, which is where we usually start, and try to find a manufacturer to start making your first samples. And we'll talk more about Alibaba and some of the details there in just a moment. But the benefit of this launch strategy is that you're typically able to make a bigger profit by standing out from the crowd and adding some real value. The guy who made the Froggles in this case, obviously he added value to an existing product. I mean, his goggles are better for particular situations, kids with certain types of hair, whatever. For those people, he added a ton of value, which is great, and they're doing very well for themselves. The risk is that you do have to invest more money typically to get started because, and usually this is going to be thousands of dollars depending on what the product is. There are times it may be less if you're doing a really cheap product of some kind. However, manufacturers, when they are making something custom for you, so it's not just something that they make all the time and might even have in stock, but they're doing a new size for you and putting your logo and doing different colors or whatever, they're going to want a minimum order quantity that's sort of worth their time to make that. So 300, 500, 1,000, kind of depends what it is, but they're going to want you to order in some level of volume, which obviously is going to drive up your costs. And then of course you have no guarantees that product's going to sell. I mean, you could look at all of these numbers and all the metrics in the world, but until you sell it, you don't really know for sure. So there's definitely more risk involved here as far as financially, but the reward is greater as well, potentially. We've seen some products do really, really well using this method. And so it can really pay off for you. All right, let me get back to, let me go to my next slide here. All right, so finding a reputable manufacturer, and let me talk a little bit about Alibaba and just some general tips here to protect you, as you're doing your first product. First, you only want to work with manufacturers who really get it, and you'll know after probably just one email or a couple of emails back and forth. And so as I mentioned, you'll go to Alibaba, you'll search for goggles, you'll search for whatever it is, and you'll see tons of results. And what I do is I start pulling up, sometimes, I like to filter down and just see the gold suppliers. And when you're first starting out, that's just an extra level of protection. There's some kind of pre-qualification they go through to sort of meet that status. And so if you're really particular and you want to be extra safe, you can just check a box, and I'll show you that in a moment. And you can just deal with gold suppliers. But you still want to make sure you get a sales rep, somebody from the company who understands what you're saying. So knowing the English language is one thing, but like understanding the English language, assuming that you speak English, is super important, because they're not going to understand the nuance of what you're talking about if you get into more complicated products or you want specific changes or customizations. So if you get a response back that looks something like this, I just move on. I just delete that, because it's like, I don't think that we're really speaking the same language here, literally. So in that case, I want to look for somebody. It's important, if you're going to have like a long-term relationship, it's important to have somebody there who knows English well enough that can kind of translate what you're doing to their team there locally, and actually make it come to life. If not, you're going to have a relationship that's just fraught with miscommunication, and it's going to be a problem, because you're going to expect one thing and get another, and it's just stop it right there. If they don't get the first email and they don't understand what you're talking about and what you're looking for, just move on until you find somebody that does. All right, and so when you go to Alibaba, I mentioned you can just check a box and just search for people that are marked as a gold supplier on there. So in this case, I pulled up like a bike seat, and I'm just looking at only gold suppliers, and that's how you would do that. It's very simple. And then also using Alibaba's trade assurance payment as your payment method. And so this is like, it kind of serves as a form of escrow in a way. Basically, when the supplier, when you work the whole process through Alibaba, they give you a level of protection there. Fortunately, we've never had to actually do this, but the idea behind it is that the supplier agrees to a date by when they'll deliver the goods or have them done, and if they don't deliver by that date, you can essentially appeal it through Alibaba, who kind of serves as the intermediary there, and potentially get your money back or work through that situation. Either way, it provides an extra level of protection as opposed to just sending a bunch of money via PayPal directly to somebody who you have no relationship with. So we've definitely done PayPal transactions, especially for smaller stuff like getting a sample and even doing larger orders. However, we've only done that in cases where we already have a relationship there and a bit of a history. And so just a couple things to do for your first product to help you feel a little bit more protected and secure, to make sure things are going well and you're working with a solid manufacturer. All right, so steps to getting a quality product. Let me talk about this. First of all, if you're thinking you're going to spend a large amount, and I realize that large is sort of a general term, it means different things to different people depending on where you're at. But if you're coming in the door and you've got a bunch of money sitting around, you're like, I'm just going to do this. There's a tool out there that you can pay for. I forget the pricing on it, but it's pretty cool. It's called Import Genius. If you go to importgenius.com, essentially all of the records for the customs and things like that when goods are being brought into the U.S., those are public record. And so what Import Genius does is they filter that down. It's kind of a search engine to where, let's just say you were going to do a tool and you wanted to find out where DeWalt, let's just assume that DeWalt Power Tools makes their tools in China, and you want to find out who DeWalt's actual manufacturer is. They have to sort of register that with the U.S. Customs, and so you can go into Import Genius, look up DeWalt or whatever company you're competing with, and find out where they made their goods. And so what that does, it gives you some leverage to where maybe you could bypass something like Alibaba, work with an agent or find a way to get in touch directly with that company. And what the deal is that you're able to have a bit of protection going in the door, because you understand that, hey, if they make stuff that is the high quality brand in my market, I know that they know how to make high quality stuff, right? So they can do high quality things for me as well. So that's a great way to find somebody. Another is that you should be ordering the products of your competitors. So if you don't have them already, if you're coming in and you're making some kind of tool or whatever, get on Amazon or go to your local hardware store and buy 3 to 5 of the top tools that you're going to be competing against. That way, when you go through the process of getting samples and even just using them hands-on as a user, get a sense for what they do well, what they don't do well, what you would change. You need to be seeing that stuff. If you're going in completely blind to a product that you don't know and you're trying to compete and you've never actually seen your competitors' products in person, it's really hard to gauge and understand how your product stacks up against those when you haven't done that. And so that's a really important first step to do. Next is requesting multiple samples. So when you get that first sample from a manufacturer and you say, hey, I want to make these goggles that have this feature and that feature, etc., and they send it to you, I'm not saying you can never accept the first sample and say, let's go ahead, but don't be afraid to ask for another one. If it's not quite right, you want to see it exactly right. You want to see it, with the specifications just like what you want. Don't just assume that they're going to fix it when they go into mass production and send them $5,000 and tell them to go ahead. I want to see the production ready sample. And so definitely use that to your advantage. It's very common to request multiple samples. I've had things that I've done where I've done 4 and 5 samples. I'm sure other people have probably done many, many more. But it's annoying to go back and forth and have to do that. But you feel a lot better, a lot more confident when you go spend that money buying the product once you've seen that they know what you're talking about and they've got the quality dialed in. And then the final thing is just to provide plenty of examples of what you want, including photos to demonstrate the customizations you need. So here's an example of what I mean by that. If I was doing this bike seat and I liked, I was going to do a design just like this, but I wanted to make sure, and I said, hey, change the yellow to red, I'd encourage you to send an image like this. Point out exactly what you're talking about. Don't just assume that they're going to understand change yellow to red and know exactly what you mean. Send marked up photos like this along with your changes. So I get that sample, I want to send my feedback. I do number 1, number 2, number 3, and in context I'll say check the attached image for what I'm talking about here, and I'll have something like this for them to look at. And I found that you get a lot better results. Make sure everybody understands what you're talking about before you move forward and do another sample. Another thing is just on this front is to ask for pictures before they send you a sample. This is something you may not think of, but a lot of times they'll do a sample and then they'll just say, hey, it's on the way, here's your tracking number. But a lot of times if I remember, and I should do it every time, I'll ask them, say, hey, before you send it, send me some pictures of it. And so I've had a couple of cases where they send me pictures and I can just tell from the photos that something's wrong or they forgot something or whatever. And it's a lot faster, less expensive if I can say, hey, go fix that. Even if they got to start over right then, it saves that extra couple of weeks it's going to take for me to get the product and all that stuff. You cut out a lot of time. So make sure before they mail the sample, get a picture of it. And if you can stop a problem there, even better for everybody. All right. So common mistakes to avoid. Let me talk about just things that I've seen others do, things that we've been guilty of ourselves, that you should be thinking about as you get into launching your first product. The first is ordering too many units. If Spencer's listening to this, he can relate. I know he's been guilty of that. We all have, right? You get a little bit excited about an idea. I know I get excited about ideas. You think of something, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go on Shark Tank and just work with Mark Cuban and I'm just going to kill it. And you get so excited, you're like, oh, 1,000? No, I don't want 1,000. Give me 10,000, man. I'm going to sell out so fast, and you order 10,000 of whatever it is. And then you come to find out that, well, maybe people don't want this as much as I thought they did. And now I've got all this money sunk into it and you got a problem. So, look, you can always order more. Order as little as you can. And, even just try to break even on that first round and kind of know that, okay, I know that next time if these sell through like I think they will, next time I can order more and get my costs down and start making a profit then. But right now I just want to verify the idea. I want to validate that there's a market, that sort of thing. So don't fall into the trap of getting too excited and ordering too many units before you actually know if anybody's going to want to buy your product. Next thing is picking a product with too much competition. Now, competition's a good thing. I said at the very beginning, you want to see products like yours that are already selling, or at the very least solutions, things solving the same problem that you're planning to solve. You want to see sales there because that sort of confirms that there's demand and that there's a market for it. However, the problem is the easiest thing to do is to just do like a private label product where you don't change anything. And so I talked about that using the quick launch strategy with like AliExpress and doing a small volume amount, and that's one thing. Okay, there's a place for that, to do these sort of small dollar tests just to see if you can find a little niche market to go into. But if you go into something where you've just got hundreds of products on Amazon that all look and do just about the same thing, I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. We've fallen into that trap before too, thinking that we could, maybe if we get some reviews, we can get up there and get some of the market. And maybe there's somebody that can do that. But I don't suggest it, because what tends to happen, what I've seen happen many times, is when nobody has anything different about their product and you go do something that to the customer looks exactly the same as 100 other things, the only other way to compete is based on price. And so you end up having to try to cut your price, and then before you know it, you're losing money and it's just a nightmare. So you always want to make sure that if you go into a competitive market, have a unique offering, have something that stands out. Next mistake is getting impatient and accepting poor quality. I talked a minute ago about getting samples and asking for multiple samples and that whole thing. You really want to press for quality from your manufacturer, and it's easy to get impatient. I still battle this now, having I guess a couple years under my belt selling various FBA products, is that you're so excited about launching and you really want to get this out there, and maybe it's something seasonal and you're like, hey, I really need to get this in there by winter or whatever. And you're so anxious to do that you're like, that's good enough, and you just start selling it. And I think that's a mistake. You really want to make sure you get it right, because you're about to spend a lot of money, and things can go very wrong if you do a subpar product and you're like, yeah, good enough, let's just get it done. Real people start buying that product and start leaving you poor reviews because your product's not very good, and then you stop selling, or you're not selling very much and you got to lower prices and you got a problem. You'd be much better off to get the quality right, be patient, even though it's hard, even if it's going to take a couple more months or whatever. Not fun to wait, but you're better off doing that and kind of doing things the right way. Very common mistake. Last thing is overlooking the hidden costs. So I told you about the FBA calculator, that free tool earlier. Obviously, looking at look up some products that are just like yours as far as the size and the weight and pricing, and see what the FBA costs are on those to give you a solid idea. Also, just the cost of shipping and customs and the fees that go along with that. There are costs there. So when you get into that part of it, like the actual importing, take some time to learn that and understand it. Don't just assume that, hey, they said they can make these for $2 a piece, I'm getting 1,000, so my cost is $2,000. Like, that's not the case. It's going to, assuming those are coming from China, depending on what it is and how big they are and how many boxes they are and all of that is going to affect the shipping cost. So make sure you're factoring all that in and you have a true landed cost of goods. In other words, what's it cost me to have them at my door, have them at Amazon's warehouse, and that's your real cost. And so a lot of people won't do that, and so they'll come in thinking, oh man, I'm gonna make a fortune on these, like I've got so much room here, so much margin. But when you overlook some of these hidden costs, you find out once you actually start selling, oh man, I'm not making much money at all, and that's a real problem. So keep that in mind. All right, so final thoughts as we wrap this up about launching your first profitable FBA product. First of all, I've said it before, look for products that already have proven sales. If you see products out there like the one you want to do and nobody's buying it, let that be a sign to you. All right, keep looking. So dig in and figure out how you can make something better and unique. And so I showed how to look at reviews and search through reviews, and that's a really valuable process. Another way to kind of do that is when you're looking at Amazon. I'll pop out and show you real quick. If I was looking, just searching as a customer on Amazon, let's say I was trying to do something related to weddings, what you can do is look at the suggested searches here. So, wedding planner, and then even when you start typing that in, I've got these suggestions here, and so I've got different ideas. Oh, a wedding planner notebook. Another thing you can do to get some ideas flowing here and look to make things better is that I can change the category. So if I want to go change to let's just say household and baby care, and now I want to search for wedding, a lot of times the ideas that they give you here are a little bit different depending on the category you're in, as opposed to just being in the general all categories. And so searching through this, finding some ideas that way is a great way to get your mind going down that process, figuring out how you can make something unique in the market that you're trying to be in. Next is to stay patient and push for those quality samples, like I mentioned, and remember to send those specific directions. If you're general and not clear, be over clear. All right, make sure that they really understand what you want. Kind of don't take no for an answer. Or I've found that if a manufacturer says, "Oh, we could do that, like we could do that nicer material, but it's way too expensive," and I'll say, "Oh, okay. Well, how expensive is it?" It's going to cost an extra 75 cents per unit, and I'm thinking, okay, well, it's going to be real leather. It's worth it, right? So expensive it's all relative. So push for quality and really test the limits, even if the manufacturer kind of tells you like, "Oh, no, we can't do that. It's going to cost too much." Dig into that a little bit. Don't go for a low quality product. And then consider all your costs. Have your real margins in place as good as possible. It's hard to get an exact number. I think there's some variable costs there, like with the customs fees and some of the shipping and stuff like that, but you can get pretty darn close to knowing exactly what you're going to make. And you should know those numbers, and it should be you should have plenty of margin before you actually pull the trigger and spend that kind of money. And then the final item here is just continuously improving your product. And so I mentioned that, especially if you do launch strategy number 1 of sort of launching now and changing later, it's a great opportunity because you're purchasing a small quantity. If I can sell through those, I can now start thinking about, okay, how can I make this better, right? And so I can just eventually create version 2.0, 3.0 of that product and just keep making it better and better. And as you get into real products and you start getting real customer feedback, it's a great opportunity to just hey, add that feature. A lot of times customers will have some great ideas about how you could actually make it better. And so I've done that myself, and it's worked out really, really well. So take that information you're getting seriously and actually implement it into future samples. So kind of be iterating as you go, and so you can keep your product competitive well into the future. So be sure to check out some of the other resources we have for you in this Niche Pursuits Insider Blueprint, and have a fantastic day.